Imagine buying your dream home, a beautiful Victorian mansion, hidden in the woods, sold to you at a price too good to be true. But what if the walls could whisper your name at night? What if the shadows in the hallway didn't belong to you? And what if the house itself was alive? Tonight, we enter Ravenhill House, a place where families vanish, screams echo through the walls, and the past refuses to stay buried. This is not just a haunted house story. This is a curse that chooses its family, and now it has chosen them.
In the quiet town of Ravenhill, a family of four drove down a lonely road that cut through miles of forest. The sun was setting behind the tall pine trees, painting the sky in shades of orange and crimson. At the end of the road stood an old Victorian mansion. Tall, silent, and covered with ivy, it looked like a forgotten relic from another time. Michael and Laura, with their two kids, Emma, a curious 10-year-old, and Daniel, her 14-year-old protective brother, stepped out of the car. Laura smiled nervously. "It looks charming, doesn't it?" she said, though her voice trembled. But Emma whispered, holding her brother's hand tightly, "Mom, why does the house look like it's watching us?" That night, as they unpacked boxes, the house creaked and groaned as if it were alive. When the wind howled, the windows rattled, but the strangest part was the walls themselves seemed to whisper. That night, the Ravenhill house showed its true colors. Emma was the first to wake. The little girl sat up in her bed, her eyes wide. In the corner of her dark room, a faint figure stood. A girl about her age, dressed in an old-fashioned white dress, her face hidden by long black hair. Emma rubbed her eyes, thinking she was still dreaming. But when she blinked again, the figure was gone, leaving only the sound of soft giggling that echoed through the walls. Meanwhile, in the master bedroom, Laura tossed and turned. She dreamt of a mirror, a tall, cracked mirror standing in a hallway she didn't recognize. But when she looked closer, her reflection wasn't hers at all. Instead, a pale woman with hollow eyes stared back, whispering words Laura couldn't understand. Michael, on the other hand, heard footsteps outside his bedroom, heavy, dragging footsteps, as if someone was pacing the hallway all night. But when he opened the door, nothing, only the long corridor stretching into darkness. By morning, the whole family was exhausted. They sat quietly at the breakfast table, each hiding the truth of their nightmares. But deep down, they all knew one thing. The house was not empty. The second night in Ravenhill House was worse than the first. Emma lay in bed, clutching her teddy bear when she heard it. "Emma." A soft whisper coming from the walls beside her bed. She froze. The voice was calm, almost kind, but it was not her family's voice. Slowly, she pressed her ear against the cold wall. The whisper grew louder. "Get out!" Emma screamed. Michael and Laura rushed into her room, only to find her trembling in tears. Daniel tried to comfort her. "It's just the wind," he said, but his voice shook. Later that night, Michael decided to check the house himself. He walked the corridors with a flashlight, touching the walls where the whispers seemed to come from. The strange thing was, when his hand rested on the wallpaper, he swore he felt it pulse like a heartbeat. Down in the kitchen, Laura heard something too, the sound of a woman softly crying. She followed it to the pantry door, but when she opened it, only silence. By now, all four of them knew the truth. This was not imagination. The house itself was alive, and it wanted them gone. By the third night, the family had stopped denying the truth. Something inside Ravenhill House was trying to reach them. Daniel, the eldest, was the first to notice the strange door in the attic. He had gone upstairs to put away boxes when he saw it, a tall, narrow wooden door at the far end of the attic wall. Its surface was covered in strange carvings, symbols that looked burned into the wood. The doorknob was rusted, locked tight. Daniel tried to turn it, but the lock rattled as if something on the other side pulled back. "Dad, there's a locked room up here," Daniel called. Michael climbed into the attic with a flashlight. He studied the door, frowning. "Strange. The realtor never mentioned this," he muttered. That night, as the storm raged outside, they all heard it. Bang, bang, bang. The sound of fists pounding from inside the locked attic door. Emma covered her ears, sobbing. Laura whispered, "Don't open it. Please don't open it." But Michael stared at the door long into the night, his hand twitching toward the knob, as if the house itself was daring him to open it. The next morning, Michael decided to learn more about Ravenhill House. He walked to the small diner in town where the locals sat drinking coffee and whispering among themselves. When he introduced himself as the new owner of the mansion, the diner went silent. Everyone stared at him. Finally, an old man at the counter spoke. "You bought that house? Ravenhill House?" Michael nodded. "Yes. Is there something I should know?" The old man leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "That house is cursed. Over 100 years ago, a man named Thomas Grayson lived there. They say he went mad one stormy night, murdered his wife and children, and then disappeared. Their bodies were never buried. Some believe their spirits are still trapped inside those walls." Michael's face grew pale. "But why didn't the realtor tell me this?" The old man gave a bitter laugh. "No one stays in that house for more than a month. Every family that's lived there has either vanished or left in the middle of the night, too scared to take their belongings." Back at the mansion, Laura was in the kitchen when she saw muddy footprints leading across the floor. Small footprints, as if made by children. She followed them, but they stopped at the locked attic door. Emma stood at the bottom of the stairs, whispering to herself. "They don't want us here, Mommy." Days passed, but the house grew darker with each night. It wasn't just the whispers anymore. Now, shadows moved on their own, doors slammed shut, and the temperature dropped suddenly, even when the fire burned bright. But the strangest change came over Laura. At first, it was small things. She forgot where she placed objects, called Emma by another child's name, and sometimes stood for hours staring at the locked attic door. One night, Daniel woke to the sound of his mother's voice. He followed it to the kitchen and froze in the doorway. Laura was standing barefoot on the cold floor, her back turned, whispering into the darkness. "Yes, I hear you. I will open it soon," she said in a voice that didn't sound like hers. Daniel gasped, and Laura turned. Her eyes glowed faintly red, and for a split second, her face didn't look like his mother's. It looked older, hollow, almost skeletal. The next morning, Laura acted as if nothing had happened. But at breakfast, the knife she held began to tremble in her hand, and then it flew across the table, sticking into the wall with a sharp thunk. Emma screamed. Michael grabbed Laura's hands, shouting, "What's happening to you?" Laura only smiled faintly and whispered, "They're waiting for me, in the room upstairs." Michael had reached his breaking point. He couldn't watch his wife slip further into madness, nor could he ignore the voices that filled the house each night. Desperate, he contacted a local psychic named Madame Ilara, a woman known in town for her ability to speak with spirits. The townsfolk warned him, "If you wake what sleeps in Ravenhill House, you may not survive it." But Michael didn't care. That evening, Ilara arrived. She was an older woman, dressed in black, her silver hair tied back, her eyes sharp as if she could see through walls. "This house is heavy," she whispered the moment she stepped inside. "It does not want me here." The family sat in a circle in the dining room, candles flickering in the darkness. Ilara placed her hands on the table. "No matter what happens, do not break the circle," she warned. She closed her eyes and began to chant in a low voice. The candles flickered violently. A cold wind blew through the room, though every window was shut. Suddenly, the table shook. Emma clutched Daniel's hand tightly. Laura's face went pale as her body trembled, as if something inside her was trying to break free. Then Alara's eyes flew open. She gasped. It's not one spirit. It's many. They're trapped here, and they're angry. The lights went out. From the shadows, dozens of voices whispered all at once, some crying, some screaming. The floorboards rattled as if hundreds of footsteps pounded beneath them. And then, with a deafening crash, the locked attic door slammed open on its own. That night, after the séance, Ravenhill House came alive. The family huddled together in the living room, candles their only light. But soon, even the flames trembled, flickered, and went out, plunging the house into complete darkness. Then came the footsteps, heavy, dragging, endless, from the ceiling, from the walls, from the basement, the sound of dozens of invisible figures moving all around them. Emma clutched her teddy bear. "They're here," she whispered. Shadows began to crawl across the walls, stretching long and twisted, not matching the family's movements. Figures with no eyes, no faces, just endless black silhouettes that swayed as if watching. Michael grabbed a lantern and stormed down into the basement. The others followed, terrified but unwilling to be left alone. In the basement, the air was ice cold. On the stone wall, written in dark, dripping letters, was a message. "Still here." Laura gasped, clutching her head. Her voice shifted into a low growl that wasn't hers. "You cannot leave. This house feeds on fear." Suddenly, the shadows rushed forward, filling the room, wrapping around the family like smoke. The lantern shattered, and the house roared, as if it had a heartbeat, a soul, and a hunger. The family could no longer bear it. After the séance and the night of shadows, one thing was clear. They had to leave Ravenhill House before it destroyed them. At dawn, Michael packed the car in a frenzy. Daniel dragged Emma outside, whispering, "Don't look back." Laura, pale and silent, followed slowly, her eyes distant, as if she were listening to voices no one else could hear. But the house didn't want them to leave. As Michael tried to open the front door, it slammed shut with a force that shook the walls. He pulled and pulled, but it wouldn't budge. Upstairs, doors banged one by one, as if the entire house was locking itself from the inside. Then, the staircase groaned. Invisible hands wrapped around Daniel's ankles, yanking him backward. He screamed, clawing at the steps as Michael grabbed his arms and pulled. Emma clutched her mother's dress, sobbing. But Laura's face twisted into something cold. "You can't leave," she whispered in a voice that wasn't hers. "They won't let you." Her hands reached for Emma's shoulders, squeezing too tightly, almost as if she was trying to hand the child over to the shadows creeping down the walls. Michael shouted, yanking Laura away. The house shook violently, windows shattering, furniture flying through the air. The walls seemed to breathe, groaning like a living monster. For a moment, it felt like the whole mansion was alive, and it was holding them prisoner. The storm outside raged as the family fought against the living house. The walls groaned, the lights flickered, and the whispers grew louder, overlapping until they were deafening. Suddenly, the attic door creaked open on its own. A freezing wind swept through the mansion, pulling Emma's hair and scattering papers across the floor. "It wants us to go upstairs," Laura said, her voice still not her own. Michael hesitated, but Daniel grabbed the lantern and led the way. Step by step, they climbed into the attic, the shadows crawling alongside them like hunters waiting for prey. Inside, they found something they had never seen before, an old, dust-covered trunk. Its lid was cracked, as though someone had tried to destroy it long ago. Carved into the wood was a single word, Grayson. Michael forced it open. Inside lay a diary, its pages yellowed and brittle. He picked it up, his hands trembling as he read aloud, "This house is not mine. It is alive. It feeds on fear, on sorrow, on blood. I hear them in the walls, my wife, my children. They will never leave. Nor will I." The final entry was written in frantic, jagged handwriting. The house chooses its family. Once inside, you belong to it. Forever. As Michael's voice shook, Laura suddenly screamed, clutching her chest. Shadows poured from her body like smoke, forming faces of children, women, and men, dozens of lost souls. The lantern flickered, then died. The family was plunged into darkness. In the silence, Emma's small voice whispered, "Daddy, they're standing right behind you."